With Rebirth just around the corner, I decided to rank all the dinosaurs from the first 6 movies in the Jurassic series. I'll go through these species from worst to best and also put them on a tier list. Now, what criteria am I using to judge these dinos? Well, it's pretty much just my opinion on how well I think these dinosaurs are used in the films. I'll be judging them based on their designs, the scenes they appear in, what kind of stuff they do, and how well they contribute to the story. I will not be judging them based on accuracy to the real life species, because that's not really the kind of video I'm wanting to make. But anyway, without further ado, let us begin by talking about the F tier dinosaurs. I'm starting this list off with Iguanodon, a dinosaur which is quite cool and important as it was one of the earliest dinosaurs discovered by scientists. However, the Jurassic series didn't really do a whole lot with this dinosaur. I didn't even realize it was in any of the movies. In fact, I'm willing to bet that most people didn't realize it was in the series either. It appeared very briefly in Dominion after the forest gets set on fire, and when I say it appears briefly, it's like in the background of this dark and smoky scene for like a handful of seconds. Seriously, just look at this. When I first started doing research for this video, this was somehow the best image the wiki could find to use for its appearance in the film. And although someone's now updated the picture to a better one, it's still ridiculous this was even chosen to represent it in the first place. Even when you know where to look for it, you can barely spot it. So considering all that, I have no choice but to give this dinosaur the lowest ranking in this list and place it in F tier. Corythosaurus is a hadrosaur that appeared only in Jurassic Park 3. It was featured in the scene where the heroes run into a field whilst trying to flee the Velociraptor pack, and they end up in the middle of a stampede of hadrosaurs. As well as the Corythosaurus, this herd also contains Parasaurolophus, whose presence overshadows the Corythosaurus due to it being much more recognizable and a bigger part of the series as a whole. It's also difficult to get a good look at this dinosaur in the scene due to it being such a frantic scene with everyone running away from the raptors, so we don't really get a chance to fully take in this dinosaur. It's for these reasons that I'm ranking this dinosaur low on the list. Unlike the Iguanodon, however, you can kinda notice it in the film, but it's still an easy dinosaur to miss, and it doesn't exactly do much in the whole series. The Indominus Rex was one of the 2 hybrids featured in this film series, and of the 2, I feel the Indominus was the inferior one. I personally didn't care for its inclusion too much, and I wasn't really a fan of its design either. I guess it was cool that it could camouflage, although that didn't really come up much. One of the main problems that I have with this creature comes from the scene where it communicates with the Velociraptors and convinces them to switch sides. I thought this was kind of stupid. Like, I get that the Indominus is part raptor and it's incredibly intelligent, like, that's fine. But as Owen points out towards the start of the film, it hasn't had contact with any other creatures since it ate its sibling, so its social skills should be quite limited, if non-existent. I just don't buy that it would be able to communicate with the raptors in the way that it does, but whatever. It's also probably obvious that this creature is ranked especially low since it's not actually a real species, rather just being a hybrid. I personally don't understand the interest in hybrids at all, and I think we would have been better off just having the focus be on an actual dinosaur species. Also, the Indominus loses points for murdering those apatosaurs. Like, it's a great scene and it builds up the threat of the Indominus, but seriously, fuck you for making me cry, you big ugly not real dinosaur. To start off D tier, let's talk about Atrociraptor. It's a dinosaur that only showed up in Dominion, and this one had a somewhat important role towards the start of the film. The Atrociraptors are being sold on the black market in Malta, when the buy gets interrupted by the heroes, and these raptors end up getting released. Now honestly, their designs are pretty cool, being sort of similar to the Velociraptors, but a lot bulkier. They're primarily featured during this pretty cool action scene where they chase the heroes through the city of Malta, and I liked the action of this scene. So why am I ranking this dinosaur so low then? Well, to put it simply, the way the human characters use these dinosaurs is just really stupid. They've been genetically modified to attack and kill targets that are painted with a laser pointer, same as the Indoraptor from Fallen Kingdom. And honestly, I just find the whole idea of people trying to use dinosaurs in this way to be really stupid. Like, seriously, dinosaurs would not be good for use in warfare. It's an atrocious use of this dinosaur, and a waste of what could have been a really cool inclusion in the series. I think it would have been better if they weren't given the whole laser pointer thingy, but it's too late now. Sorry, Atrociraptor. Better luck next time. Now onto Dreadnoughtus. It's a pretty cool dinosaur, and it was a nice inclusion to the Dominion roster. It didn't do much of anything in the film, to be fair, but it did feature in a couple shots. The most noteworthy thing of mention is the scene where Alan Grant and Ramsey talk about it whilst riding in the helicopter together. There's nothing bad about this dinosaur, and I'm happy it was there, but if I'm being honest, Dreadnoughtus was very much overshadowed by the other sauropods featured in this series that are much more prominent and feature in way more iconic and memorable scenes. So unfortunately, I can't rank this dinosaur particularly high on the list. Microceratus is a pretty cool small dinosaur, and one of the many species that were added in Dominion. It didn't do too much in the film. We see them in Malta at the black market, but the main scene to feature them is the one where we view the video recording of young Charlotte. I learnt whilst doing research for this video that these dinosaurs were apparently in the original Jurassic Park novel, referred to by their name at the time, Microceratops. So it's pretty cool that they were brought to the film series. But not too much else I can say about this dinosaur. On to the next one. Now, can I just say how painful it is to have to rank my favourite dinosaur so low on this list? Ceratosaurus has been a personal favourite of mine since my youth, when I would play J-Pog. And although it's maybe not as iconic as the J-Pog Albertosaurus, I did fall in love with this dinosaur through my experiences playing that game. And that love has persisted through the years. Just check out these cool mugs I have. But Ceratosaurus appears in only a single scene in the third movie, where it does basically nothing. It walks out of the jungle, finds our main cast digging through Spinosaurus shit, and then promptly turns around and leaves. It does have a very cool and unique design, which bumps it up in the rankings a little, but there's not really any way to justify putting it any higher on the list. So as much as it pains me, Ceratosaurus will have to be satisfied with D tier. Mamenchisaurus is a dinosaur that for the longest time I didn't realize was actually in the film series. This dinosaur only appeared in one scene in The Lost World, that being the scene where InGen shows up and captures a bunch of herbivores. It's a sauropod that we see this motorbike rider drive under, which is pretty cool. Would have been cooler if he was stepped on. Now, I like this scene as a whole, and the Mamenchisaurus is a cool inclusion, but considering this is its only appearance in this series, I don't think I can rank it much higher. Dimorphodon is the first species on this list that isn't actually a dinosaur. Well, excluding the Indominus, which is just someone's fucking OC. This pterosaur appeared in Jurassic World, primarily in the scene where they, along with the pteranodons, break out of the aviary and attack the guests of Jurassic World. Now, this was a really cool scene. However, I do feel that Dimorphodon gets overshadowed by the pteranodons, which are a lot more iconic and feature much more heavily in the series. So for that reason, I'm keeping Dimorphodon low on the list. But it's cool to see more pterosaur variety. Ankylosaurus is a cool and iconic dinosaur that features in the series. It first appeared in Jurassic Park 3 and had a really cool design, although it didn't actually do anything in that film. Jurassic World brought this dinosaur back and gave it a new design, which I personally find to be a lot duller. But regardless, It did actually get to do something this time around. One Ankylosaurus ends up in a duel against the Indominus Rex, although this Ankylosaurus loses this duel quite easily. Now, this is a great dinosaur, but it's brought down by its boring design in Jurassic World, and the fact that the only notable thing it does in this series is get its ass kicked by Indominus Rex. So yeah, sorry Ankylosaurus. Now it's time for the other hybrid that features in this series. I prefer Indoraptor over the Indominus Rex, and there's a few reasons why. Firstly, I feel like its design is a lot better. The Indoraptor does look pretty cool with its dark colouring and the bright stripe down its side. But more importantly, I feel it's utilised much better in its film. Fallen Kingdom does play up the horror elements a lot more than the other films, which really suits the Indoraptor. There's some cool shots and scenes that this not dinosaur is featured in, especially after its release into the mansion. Now I do have some negative things to say. Firstly, this is a hybrid, which just already gives it a lower rating to begin with. But also, it has the stupid laser pointer thingy that I talked about with the Atrociraptors. I do feel it was less terrible in this case, as the Indoraptor is more experimental and not actually technically ready. Also, they utilize the laser pointer to defeat the Indoraptor, which ties it into the plot more. It's still stupid, but at least it's slightly less irritating. The scene where it kills Ken Wheatley is a bit goofy, but I do overall like the idea of the scene, and giving this dude some comeuppance is a bonus. To finish off D tier, we have Lystrosaurus. This creature is another one that isn't actually a dinosaur. It was introduced in Dominion, where it could be seen at the black market in Malta. It doesn't do a whole lot necessarily, but it does kill an oviraptor, which is something at least. The fact that it is a non-dinosaur bumps this little bugger up in the rankings for me, because there aren't quite as many non-dinosaur species in the series. But anything higher than D tier would feel wrong to me, so here it stays. So, C tier. Dimetrodon is similar to the previous entry, being a non-dinosaur that was introduced in Dominion, except this was a bit more impactful. It features in one scene where a few of them attack Alan, Ellie and Maisie in the mines. This was a pretty cool scene, a good use of this species. But to be honest, there isn't much more to say about them. I do feel like they earn their spot in the bottom of C tier though. Oviraptor is yet another entry that was introduced in Dominion. This movie really brought a lot of new species into the series, but unfortunately it didn't really give many of them their time to shine. Oviraptor only featured in one main scene. This was in Malta, where a Lystrosaurus and Oviraptor were pitted against each other in a fight. The Oviraptor loses when it gets its head bitten off. So why do I rank this dinosaur above the creature that killed it? Well, I simply like Oviraptor more. It's also a more well-known dinosaur that I'm happy was brought to the series finally, and it's a personal favourite of mine. But this species also gets bonus points for being feathered. We only have a few feathered species in the series so far, so the feathered species we do get deserve a higher rating than they'd otherwise get. Next we have Moros intrepidus. This dinosaur is quite small and very cute. It had a few brief appearances in Dominion, and although it didn't do much of note, I can't imagine what more could have been really done with this dinosaur. It's really cool to see feathered species, and that fact does bump this up in the rankings a bit. I hope we see more of this dinosaur in the future though. What the Moros doing at the park? Baryonyx is a very cool dinosaur, and one that I personally like a lot. It was first mentioned in JP3, but Baryonyx didn't actually appear in the film series until Fallen Kingdom. This species predominantly features in that film, as well as having a small appearance in Dominion. Now, to start off with the positives, this is a solid choice of a species, and it has a really cool design. And although its appearance in Dominion was brief, I liked that the young Baryonyx got to kill that guy. You know, this baddie. the one whose name I can't be fucked to look up. But its appearance in Fallen Kingdom did leave a little to be desired. The Baryonyx tries to attack Claire and Franklin during the eruption on Isla Nublar, which was a bit silly. Lava literally pours onto its head, and it keeps trying to attack and eat these guys who are on the other side of this lava flow. It just didn't feel like they were treating this creature as an actual animal, and instead making it out to be just a violent murder machine. So yeah, Fallen Kingdom dropped the ball a bit, but Dominion made up for it slightly. So you can pretty much take most of the things I said about Baryonyx and apply them to Carnotaurus too. It also first appeared in Fallen Kingdom and tried to eat people during the eruption on Nublar. In this case, I think it's a bit worse since it first tries to eat the humans, but then gets distracted by a Sinoceratops and attacks that instead. Before the Carnotaurus can do much though, Rexy shows up to put the Carno in its place. However, Carnotaurus makes up for being worse in Fallen Kingdom by being better in Dominion. It's also in the Malta scene, and we get to see it cause a bit of havoc alongside the Allosaurus. The Carno does get bonus points for causing this dude to fall into some fire and get set ablaze, which is pretty funny. Carno also has a really cool design, and I love the one in Dominion that has a chipped horn on its head. It's really badass. Next we have Triceratops. We get to see one in the first film in the series, although it doesn't do much of anything because it's sick. Ellie ends up staying with Jerry Harding to try and help figure out why it's sick, so its inclusion does affect the plot of the first film, though it doesn't play much of an active role. In the second film, a Triceratops rams into a tent and destroys it, which was cool. But aside from that, this species is mostly a background dinosaur that never really gets much focus after its appearance in the first film. And I think there are better ceratopsians in the series, so yeah, Triceratops can live in C tier. Sinoceratops is another ceratopsian dinosaur. It first appeared in Fallen Kingdom, which is also the film it appears the most in. It's in Dominion as well, but it doesn't do much in that film. Now, I personally think Sinoceratops has a cooler design when compared to Triceratops, and while it doesn't have a major role in the story, I still prefer this dinosaur over Triceratops. There are two main things Sinoceratops actually does in Fallen Kingdom. Firstly, it licks Owen in the face to wake him up after he was tranked, saving him from being killed by the lava flow. Secondly, it gets attacked by Carnotaurus, and the Sino does a very good job of fighting off the Carno and then fleeing at the first opportunity available, which is just the smart thing to do. Stygimoloch was introduced in Fallen Kingdom, and this is the film where it is given a bit of focus and attention. After Owen and Claire are captured by the bad guys, Owen is able to aggravate a Stygimoloch in the cell adjacent to them in order to escape. Owen later sends this dino through the elevator into the room where the auction is happening, resulting in the Stygimoloch unleashing chaos as it charges into the room and starts attacking people. This dinosaur has a really cool design, and its scenes in Fallen Kingdom were entertaining, especially when it was throwing people around in the auction room. Now, sure, the way Owen gets it to break the wall down is a little bit goofy, but I'm willing to look past that. Allosaurus is next. This dinosaur is pretty similar in its use to both Baryonyx and Carnotaurus. Medium-sized carnivores introduced in Fallen Kingdom that then showed up in Malta in Dominion. But Allosaurus is definitely better than both of them for a couple key reasons. Number one, Allosaurus wasn't a moron trying to eat things during the Nublar eruption, and although its appearance in Fallen Kingdom didn't give it as much to do, being a background dinosaur is better than being a dumbass. In Dominion, Allosaurus appears mostly in the same scenes as Baryonyx and Carnotaurus, but Allosaurus gets bonus points here for having some cool kills. In the background you can see an Allosaurus eating that dude the Carno set on fire. And then a little later, they also eat a dude who was riding a scooter. The Allosaurus has a cool design too, so it's a good dinosaur, but its limited use in this series and lack of focus still gives it a place in C tier. Before any of you comment, I didn't watch the Battle of Big Rock, so it doesn't affect the ranking. T-Rex. Okay, I hear you all. T-Rex and C tier? Really? What does the C stand for? Controversial? Well, maybe. But this is where I think the T-Rex belongs, and the primary reason for its low rating is the Jurassic World trilogy. But we'll get to those films in a second. Firstly, let's talk about the T-Rex's inclusion in the original trilogy, which was outstanding. Well, at least in the first two films. T-Rex was one of the biggest players in the original film, and it had some truly iconic and amazing scenes. The part where she breaks out of her enclosure is a tremendously good scene. And of course the car chase scene a bit later is quite iconic too. Rexy eats Donald Gennaro, which was quite an iconic scene and was one of the first major deaths of the film if you don't count the worker at the start. And at the end of the film she ends up saving the day when she enters the visitor center and kills the remaining velociraptors in yet another iconic scene. Rexy's design in this film is great. Her roar is iconic, the way the water ripples as she steps, everything about her is amazing. Honestly, the first film uses T-Rex really well. Going forward to The Lost World, T-Rex sort of takes over from the Velociraptor as the main animal antagonist, except this time there are 2 adult T-Rexes and a little baby one. Now the T-Rexes were used pretty well in this film, and featured in yet more iconic scenes, from pushing the trailer over the cliff, chasing the survivors into the waterfall, and of course the rampage of San Diego. Now, the T-Rexes do kill Eddie Carr, which is really cringe, but then later they kill Peter Ludlow, which is really based, so I guess that sort of evens out. Now, after giving the T-Rex such a glowing review, how can I justify putting it in C tier? Well, to put it bluntly, the Jurassic World movies ruined T-Rex for me. Rexy, the T-Rex from the original film, features in all 3 of the Jurassic World movies, and it's abundantly clear that she's mainly there for the purpose of fan service. The creators of these films just really want to stroke her cock, like it's ridiculous. In Jurassic World they use T-Rex to fight the Indominus Rex at the end, and it fights alongside Blue against the Indominus, until they eventually draw it close enough to the water for a Mosasaurus to snipe it. It was a bit stupid that they chose to release her and that this plan worked out. Also, Rexy and Blue fighting together was kind of extremely silly, but that's nothing compared to Fallen Kingdom, where Rexy decides to show up out of nowhere to shit all over this Carnotaurus during the middle of the volcanic eruption. And then of course they play some triumphant music as she does her iconic roar. This is totally how real animals behave when a volcano is erupting in their vicinity. Now, Carnotaurus shouldn't have been trying to attack our heroes in the first place, sure, but Rexy has no real reason to attack the Carnotaurus here, other than the fan service and saving our heroes, because that's what she did in the previous films, I guess. Towards the end of the film, Eli Mills is outside and vulnerable, and as the main villain of the film, it's obviously time for his comeuppance. And the film sort of tricks you by showing Carnotaurus approaching him, making us think it's going to kill him. But then Rexy teleports into the scene and kills Eli, seizing the moment from Carnotaurus, which is really petty. Like, seriously, what the fuck did the Fallen Kingdom team have against Carnotaurus? Did they just really hate that old Disney movie? This feels way too personal. And of course, Rexy shows up in Dominion to once again save our main characters when she rocks up to fight Giganotosaurus and double team her with the Therizinosaurus. Honestly, Giganotosaurus deserved better. Rexy, you're overrated. I like T-Rex, but it seems like the Jurassic World creators just really wanted everyone to know how amazing Rexy is and that she's the strongest dinosaur. Better than Indominus, better than Giganotosaurus, better than that fucking dumbass loser bitch Carnotaurus. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy around JP3 for the scene where Spinosaurus kills T-Rex, and I completely understand that. But one great thing about that film was that they gave the spotlight to a new large carnivore. I don't think they needed to shit on the T-Rex to do so, but I appreciate that they gave the spotlight to someone else. Dominion was a good chance for Giganotosaurus to take the spotlight, but alas, T-Rex has to be the best apparently. Anyway, that's a lot of words that I just said, so let's move on to B tier. To start off B tier, we have Parasaurolophus. Now this is a very cool and iconic dinosaur. It technically first appeared in the first film, but this was only in the background. Its first real scene is in The Lost World, where it was one of the many species featured in the big InGen hunting scene. This is where we got to see its great design and hear those iconic sounds. The scene where one gets captured by the hunters was great, and hearing its sad calls really adds to the scene. After this, Parasaurolophus mostly returns to the background again for the next few films, but it does feature for a scene towards the start of Dominion where Owen and some other chase down a herd of wild parasaurs and manage to capture one with the intention of giving it to the authorities. But unfortunately, some poachers steal the dinosaur from him at gunpoint. Now, whilst I didn't care too much for the Dominion design, this was a pretty good scene and it did set up for future scenes. Gallimimus is another iconic dinosaur from the Jurassic series, and it's one of the more unique ones when compared to the rest of the roster, being a smaller herbivore than most of the ones we see. The scene it's most well known for is the scene in which it was introduced in the original film. A flock of Gallimimus end up running into Alan and the kids, and the trio have to run away as the dinosaurs run past them. Although, unfortunately, Rexy ambushes the flock and kills this one unlucky dino. Rip to a real one. After that, Gallimimus doesn't get too much focus. It ends up being a background dinosaur. Although this is fairly common for the herbivores, which never really get as much attention as the main carnivore threats. Which does make sense, I suppose. But yeah, despite mostly being a background dinosaur, this one is iconic enough to earn a place in B tier. Nusutoceratops is a species that doesn't feature too prominently throughout the series. It was introduced in Dominion, and although we see some adults of the species, including the one who absolutely wrecks this truck, the focus is predominantly on the babies of the species. Claire rescues a baby Nusutoceratops from an illegal breeding facility at the start of the film. We also later see another baby when Ellie and Alan are preparing to fly off to Biosyn. Despite not appearing much, I do feel this species deserves this high spot on the tier list, because we don't always get as much focus on the babies, and I think this species was a really cool one to see. I also love their design and personally find this species to be quite a cool one that I prefer over the other ceratopsians in the series. So yeah, that's Nusutoceratops. Now onto Quetzalcoatlus. This species of pterosaur was introduced in Dominion, and I'm so glad it was. This pterosaur flies straight into B tier mostly through its sheer magnitude. It's an absolutely massive pterosaur, and it does stand out from the pteranodons for that fact alone. Its primary scene is one where it destroys this plane, which must be made of paper or something, but regardless, this species makes a good impression, even if it's only a brief one. There's also a cool bit where you can see on the news that a pair of Quetzalcoatlus have made a nest on the top of a building in a city, which is neat. But yeah, other than that, there's not much else to say about this species. It's a great addition to the series, and I hope we see more of it going forward. Giganotosaurus is a large carnivore that was introduced in Dominion. It was built up to be a big threat in that movie, appearing briefly near the start of the Biosyn Island storyline, where we see it square off against Rexy and steal her food. Following this, it reappears later and attacks the group in this pretty cool scene where our heroes narrowly escape being eaten by it. This scene was good and gave us a cool showcase of the Giganotosaurus. And even if it was a bit sluggish, it was definitely a threat to be on the lookout for. It then shows up again at the end and runs into Rexy again, prompting the two to duel each other in a cool fight between the two large carnivores. And Gigi performs really well and actually wins the fight. At least for a moment, before the Therizinosaurus shows up and Gigi gets double teamed, which was pretty unfair to be honest. Now, this species is cool, the name is cool, its design is cool, and it's really nice to see another large carnivore get the spotlight for a bit. I just wish they hadn't gone and made Rexy kill Gigi like that, but what we got was still pretty good. Except for that stupid opening in the extended version. Ugh, in Dominion's extended edition, we get an opening scene to the film that supposedly takes place 65 million years ago, And in that scene, we see a Giganotosaurus fight and kill a T-Rex, which is incredibly stupid for a few reasons. Firstly, the extinction of the dinosaurs is actually around 66 million years ago, not 65, but whatever. Let's ignore that minor detail. The thing is, the T-Rex lived around 72 to 66 million years ago, whereas Giganotosaurus lived approximately 96 to 95 million years ago. That's over 20 million years of separation. These dinosaurs didn't exist at the same time, and even if they did both exist at the same time, T-Rex lived in what is now North America, whereas Giganotosaurus lived in what is now Argentina. They wouldn't have crossed paths even if they did live at the same time. This fucking opening infuriates me. It's not that hard to research where and when dinosaurs are from, you morons. Pachycephalosaurus is a dinosaur that first appeared in The Lost World. This is also the only movie to really feature them. They do technically appear in Jurassic World, where we hear they've been causing problems for the park, which is amusing, but they primarily feature in The Lost World. This species is one of the many that are in the chase sequence with the InGen hunters, and we witness one Pachy getting captured by them. We also witness one absolutely wreck this dude by launching him through a truck, which is iconic. The Pachy makes a good impression, despite its relative lack of screen time. Compsognathus is an iconic species, first introduced in The Lost World, and one of the smallest species in the series. These carnivores aren't too threatening individually, but as a group they can be quite dangerous. In The Lost World, we see them in the opening when they frighten this young girl after she wanders off from her family. Don't worry, she's fine. These movies aren't as dark as the novels. They then show up again once the InGen hunters arrive. One of them is sitting here near Dita's Stark, just chilling and vibing, and Stark zaps it with an electric stick because he's a cunt. Later in the movie, the compies get their revenge when Dita gets lost and loses his weapons, and he gets attacked by a whole group of them. They chase him, bite him a bunch, and although he's able to fight them off for a little while, they eventually overpower him and eat him alive. Following this, Compsognathus doesn't do much else in the series and just becomes a bit of a background dino, which is totally fine as due to their small size, they're quite often not a major threat, and their scene in The Lost World would be hard to top since it's so iconic.
The Lannisters send their regards.
Okay, this is where my personal favoritism comes into play. Spinosaurus was, at one point, my favorite dinosaur of all time, and although that spot has now been taken by Ceratosaurus, Spino is still a dinosaur I'm incredibly fond of. This dinosaur featured in Jurassic Park 3, and only that film, where it was one of the primary threats of the film, and this thing is just iconic. I mean, its design, the sail, the coloration, its long schnoz, the roars it makes. I fucking love this thing. Even aside from all that, the Spinosaurus was a great dinosaur in terms of its use in the film. He appeared in a few different scenes, and they're just iconic. There's the attack on the plane where he eats Cooper and Nash, and the boat scene at the end where he's swimming around in the water, and of course the fucking phone call scene. There is also the fight with the T-Rex where Spino kills Rex, which was and still is a very controversial scene that had a lot of backlash. I think this contributed to the Jurassic World writers making sure Rexy always comes out on top in future films. Now, I don't think having Spino kill a T-Rex was the smartest or the best decision, since it did end up being quite controversial. But I do like that the third film gave the spotlight to a new large carnivore, since up to that point, the only large carnivore we'd had was T-Rex, who was a major part of the first two films. Now, the Spinosaurus does get criticism in this film for seeming to have a vendetta against the heroes and chasing them around the whole island, which is admittedly a flaw of the film. Although there are possible explanations for this, none of these explanations exist in the film as it is, so they can't really be used to justify the Spinosaurus. Due to both that flaw and the controversy surrounding its fight with the T-Rex, I think Spinosaurus is held back from A tier by just a small margin, but number 10 is still a solid place on this ranking. We're in the single digits now. Pteranodon is the predominant pterosaur featured in the Jurassic film series. Although technically first appearing in The Lost World and being in every movie since then, it only really has two major scenes in the series where they play a big role. Firstly, in Jurassic Park 3, there's the large aviary segment where our heroes head through and get attacked by a bunch of pteranodons. This whole scene is incredible, and it was the first real showcase we had in the film series of pterosaurs. We get to see both adults as well as babies, which is cool. Later, they end up attacking and brutally injuring Billy after he successfully rescues Eric. Side note, but I think Billy should have died here. Bringing him back at the end did a disservice to his character. The next major scene to feature them is Jurassic World, where they, along with Dimorphodon, are released from the aviary by the Indominus Rex, and they end up causing havoc among the park, attacking civilians, causing a mass panic. They kill Zara in what is the most absurd death in the series, and their rampage ends up costing hundreds of millions of dollars in lawsuits, which is quite impressive. This species was iconic, and I liked their design, especially in JP3. Their scenes were amazing, and the Pteranodon deserves its place right at the top of B tier. One more thing, but Alan kicking this Pteranodon is the funniest shit ever. To start off A tier, we shift our attention from the skies to the sea. Mosasaurus is the only marine reptile that featured in the Jurassic films so far, so it stands out from the rest of the roster for that reason alone. Now, Mosasaurus was first introduced in Jurassic World, and it appeared in the following two films as well. This is a species that gets shown only in a few brief instances, but those appearances are usually quite good. Now, Dominion didn't give the Mosasaur much to do, although it does capsize this boat, which is cool. But most of the Mosasaur's important scenes are in the first two Jurassic World films. In Jurassic World, Mosasaurus was introduced when Zack and Gray are touring the park, and they watch it during feeding time. It later shows up during the Pteranodon outbreak, when these pterosaurs get too close to the water whilst trying to eat Zara. And then its final appearance in the film is when it kills the Indominus Rex. These are cool scenes, and there's an escalation here in the coolness and importance of each of its appearances in this film. Fallen Kingdom is the film where Mosasaurus really gets to shine though. It appears in the opening scene when a team of people infiltrate the abandoned Jurassic World to retrieve Indominus Rex DNA. The Mosasaurus stalks these guys in their little submarine, and then later breaches the water to kill this dumbass. Now, the opening scene for this film is outstanding, and the Mosasaurus is the clear star of this scene. There are some amazing shots in this scene with the Mosasaurus in particular, and it makes a strong impact. Velociraptor is an interesting dinosaur to try and rank. I think this species is somewhat similar to T-Rex in that it's a species that was utilized incredibly well in the original trilogy, but in the Jurassic World trilogy it was used, let's say, less than ideally, but we'll get to that in a second. Velociraptor ends up being the main threat in the original Jurassic Park film, and they were used brilliantly in that movie. They were the first dinosaur we got to see, well, kind of. It's very heavily obscured in the opening scene, but we get to see how dangerous it is right from the get-go. Later we learn about how intelligent they are, and after the park goes to shit, our heroes end up accidentally releasing the Velociraptors when they try and reset the power, and thus the Velociraptors end up stalking and hunting the remaining humans. They end up killing Ray Arnold and Robert Muldoon, so including the worker at the start of the film, Velociraptor has the highest kill count in the original movie. These dinosaurs were the stars of this film, and they feature in many iconic scenes, like the kitchen scene, the scene where they kill Muldoon, and the chase through the visitor center, among others. The Lost World had Velociraptors in it, but this movie gave more focus to the T-Rex, so although they appear in a few cool scenes, their role here is lessened. But Jurassic Park 3 gave the Velociraptors more focus and did some great stuff with them. The Velociraptors get to showcase their intelligence more. For example, when we see them use Udesky as bait to try and get to the others. We also see them being more communicative. We also see them communicating a lot more with each other. And the cool thing is, this film gives them the motivation to hunt the humans across the island beyond just needing to eat. since they only start hunting the humans after Billy, genius that he is, steals some of their eggs. Beyond the original trilogy, the raptors have become much less terrifying due to the way they seem to end up being tamed to an extent. Now, is it cool to watch Chris Pratt ride a motorcycle with 4 velociraptors running alongside him? Sure, but it's also incredibly stupid. Jurassic World started out with something interesting, with Owen being someone who had been working with the raptors and training them since their birth. And it seemed believable at first. He was only barely able to hold them off long enough to rescue this dumbass. But we know the raptors would have totally eaten him here without remorse if he'd slipped up even a little. But then later in the movie, they released the raptors to hunt the Indominus Rex, which is incredibly stupid. And most of what follows is also incredibly stupid. The raptors team switch to the Indominus and slaughter the humans, only to then team switch to Owen's side later and fight the Indominus. Realistically, the raptors should have just run off to do their own thing. Fuck the humans. Fuck the Indominus.
Fuck the king.
Just go live your own lives. The next 2 films feature Blue, who is the main raptor in Jurassic World, and she's basically just Owen's pet. Honestly, it's kind of stupid. Whilst I think the Jurassic World trilogy did a terrible job at portraying the raptors in general, I'm at least more willing to accept this stuff when compared to what they did with Rexy. This is because they at least provide some actual reasoning behind the way the raptors are in these films. And there were a few cool scenes with the velociraptors in Jurassic World, like the one where Owen holds them off for this dumbass to escape, or when we see them hunting the humans and Claire's watching on the cameras. The velociraptors also get bonus points for, in my opinion, just being cooler than the T-Rex. Also, side note, but the velociraptors have the coolest designs in the series. Jurassic Park 3 is probably my personal favourite in terms of velociraptor designs. Just check out these colorations. It's so cool to see sexual dimorphism among the dinosaurs. One last thing, but the velociraptors get bonus points for killing Hoskins, because fuck that guy. Now, onto another raptor. Pyroraptor appeared in Dominion in only a single scene, but it really stole the show for that one scene. This dinosaur is a really cool one with a great design. This dinosaur stands out for a couple reasons. Firstly, it's one of the few feathered species featured in the film series, which earns it bonus points. It also demonstrates itself to be a tremendous swimmer, and in this scene it tries to hunt Owen and Kayla after they crash. It chases them both on land and through water, swimming under the ice. This made it stand out quite a lot from the other species, and this sequence was quite well done. I don't have anything negative to say about this dinosaur. It was just outstanding and performed incredibly well in its scene. Stegosaurus is a very well-known and iconic dinosaur that was first featured in The Lost World, which is also the film that gave it a bit of a focus with its own scene. The scene in question being when Ian, Nick and Eddie are all first arriving on Isla Sorna, and they meet up with Sarah. Sarah, being a dumbass, goes and touches a baby Stegosaurus, which angers the parents who try to attack her. It was a brief scene, but it was cool to see this species brought to the film series. And it was also cool to see an herbivore being dangerous, since this was really the first time in the series we got to see that. Following this scene, the Stegosaurus is relegated to being a background dinosaur in the following films. So this scene in The Lost World is the most we really get to see them, but it was a pretty good scene. Therizinosaurus appeared in Dominion, and despite only appearing in 2 scenes, it really stole the show. The one shown in the movie happens to be blind, and likely due to that fact it's very aggressive. After ejecting from the plane, Claire ends up encountering the Therizinosaurus in what might be one of the best scenes from Dominion, and she has to crawl away from the creature and hide so it doesn't kill her. This scene was so amazing and very tense to watch. And the best part is, they pulled this off with an herbivore. Usually in this franchise, it's the carnivores that threaten the heroes, so it's refreshing to see an herbivore being so threatening and imposing. This species also had a great design, and it has feathers which gives it bonus points. The one thing holding this dinosaur back from being an S tier is to do with the second scene it's featured in, where it double teams the Giganotosaurus alongside Rexy. After killing Gigi, this dinosaur seems chill with Rexy for some reason. Aside from that, this species was an incredible addition to the series. Starting off both S tier and the top 3, we have Dilophosaurus. This dinosaur was first introduced in the original film, where it appears in a single scene, but it certainly made a strong impact. Its scene in the original film is outstanding, as it emerges from the rainforest and encounters Nedry, at first just seemingly curious as it regards him, before it later turns aggressive, spits in his eyes, and then eats him in his car. The whole scene is iconic and one of the best death scenes in the film series, and the design of the Dilophosaurus is really well done. The crests, the frill, its small little body, it all just looks so good. And the sounds it makes, oh my, they're just perfect. Following its first appearance, the Dilophosaurus vanished from the film series for a long time. A hologram of it appeared in Jurassic World, but it wasn't until Dominion that this species was brought back to the film series. Its use in that film wasn't quite as iconic, and I feel like its design was a bit weaker in that film, sure. But despite having a weaker appearance in that film, I do still feel like the Dilophosaurus deserves to be ranked in S tier. And in Dominion, they did get the honour of killing Dodson, which was cool. Side note, I thought bringing Dodson back was stupid and I hated his appearance in Dominion, but that's irrelevant to this video. The Dilophosaurus is the highest ranked carnivore on my list here as well, an accolade I think it definitely deserves. In the number 2 spot, we have Apatosaurus. This dinosaur is a sauropod that was first introduced in Jurassic World and appeared in the following 2 films as well. Though it appeared in the background a lot, this species had 2 major scenes in the films. Firstly, it appeared near the start of Dominion when Maisie runs off and encounters a pair of Apatosaurus, which some workers are trying to lead away. This scene is a cool one as it shows these dinosaurs out in the world amongst humans, which was a good way to establish the new norm. The main scene that contributes to this dinosaur being so high on the list, though, occurs in Jurassic World. There's a scene where Owen and Claire discover a dying Apatosaurus that was wounded by the Indominus Rex, and we get this tender and emotional moment as Owen tries to comfort the animal as it's dying. This scene is one that really gets to me, and it's one that was very important for Claire's character arc, as this helps her start to see these creatures as more than just numbers on a screen. Without this scene, it wouldn't really make sense for her to suddenly care enough about the dinosaurs to become an activist, as she does in the next film. So this dinosaur has an important role to play in the Jurassic World trilogy. This scene alone elevates this species into S tier. And finally, at number 1, we have Brachiosaurus. This dinosaur is an incredibly iconic species and one that featured most prominently in the original Jurassic Park film, although it also appeared in a few of the other movies too. Now, although Velociraptor is technically the first dinosaur we see in Jurassic Park, it's very heavily obscured during the opening scene. So Brachiosaurus is the first dinosaur that we get an actual proper look at in the whole film series, which I believe was the perfect decision. This sauropod is massive and it carries with it a certain majesty. Its design is brilliant and the sounds it makes are beautiful, and I can think of no better species to first introduce us to the dinosaurs. It returns later in the film after the T-Rex attack to remind Alan, the kids, and us, the viewer, of the amazing brilliance and majesty of these creatures. And we get a nice scene after the group awakens where Grant feeds the Brachiosaur and they all pat it. This was a great scene, and I think this species really showed off the wonder of these creatures being alive again. There was also a scene in Fallen Kingdom that featured this species prominently. After the eruption on Isla Nublar, the gang ends up making it to the boat that's leaving the island. As the boat departs, we watch as a lone Brachiosaurus that was left behind calls out in its futile attempt to flee before it's consumed by the flames. This was an emotional scene on a similar level to the Apatosaurus death in the previous film, and this scene really elevated this species for me as well. Aside from that, Brachiosaurus makes some other appearances in either the background or appearing in scenes where people are amazed by the wonder of the dinosaurs. I will say there's something a bit off about their design in Jurassic Park 3, but other than that, this dinosaur is outstanding and earns its place in the number 1 spot. So, that's the end of my list. I must say, this ranking was quite fun to make, and in doing the research for this video, I was able to learn more about the many species that appeared in the film series. I had a great time making this video. Also, some big news dropped whilst I was working on this video. Jurassic World Evolution 3 has been officially announced and given a release date. It's set to release towards the end of October, and I plan to make some videos covering that after it releases. So if you're interested in seeing more Jurassic World content, then please consider subscribing. But anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.